Okay, so we've just found out that Kalshi, which is one of these prediction market sites, companies, has decided to fine a $20,000 fine someone called Artem Kapter, who allegedly placed bets based on, quote, material non-public information that he got by working as a video editor for one of the world's most famous YouTubers, Mr. Beast. This is a big deal, and I guess the place to start is, what is Kalshi? What are prediction markets? What are we talking about here?
A quick explanation on what prediction markets are. They are online betting markets where you can bet money on the outcome of real-world events. If you go on the two most famous websites, Polymarket and Kalshi, right now, you can see bets for things like...
Should I get it up? I'll get Polymarket up.
You can usually bet on anything like
Polymarket.
The outcome of wars that are going on right now, when Israel will strike Iran, when the US will strike Iran.
Yeah, so it's got US strikes Iran by, and then it's got two different dates, March 31st and March 14th. There's some random stuff as well, like will the US confirm that aliens exist before 2027?
What are the odds on that?
It's 16% chance, yes or no, and the volume is $9 million. I'm going to say no to that. I'm joking.
Well, Trump has said he's going to...
That is true.
...do something about aliens. And some of the stuff tips into slightly grotesque betting, arguably. Like, you can bet on specific outcomes in the ongoing Ukraine war, and you can bet on whether Israel will bomb Gaza. You can bet on the outcomes of court cases. You can bet on whether some random celebrity is going to appear at the Super Bowl. You can bet on pretty much anything. Anyone can put a bet on there. So Kalshi and Polymarket, they are valued at $8 billion and $11 billion each. So tons of money is being traded on these platforms. Both have struck deals with major US news organizations, CNBC, CNN. So you may now see the betting odds of certain news events like elections on the ticker in American news soon. And we can talk a little bit about the regulatory framework around these websites in a bit. But I think one really interesting thing that most people don't know about prediction markets is the kind of philosophical idea behind them. So it comes out of this rationalist movement within Silicon Valley. And what they believe is that if you aggregate enough information from betting markets, and if people are staking their own money on those bets, you essentially create the most accurate predictor of the future. A kind of crystal ball. And Shane Copeland...
So they're almost like polling, essentially.
Yeah, they're more accurate than polling.
And is that because of the sheer number of people that get involved and have a stake in it, I guess?
It's because of that. It's also because, like you said, they have a stake in it, so because
they want to be right.
Their rationalist belief is if you are betting your own money on something, then you are going to be accurately saying what you think will happen rather than polling, which is less accurate.
Or like, maybe I think this, yeah.
But the other reason it's more accurate is because of insider betting. It arguably benefits the founders of these companies in their quest to create a kind of crystal ball for the future if the people making bets, if there's insider betting going on, if people with privileged information as to what will happen in a news event, say it's will the US strike Iran, for example, if they bet on it, that brings the betting odds closer to the actual probability of an event happening. And that insider betting is essentially what Mr. Beast's editor was accused of by Kalshi, because they pointed out that his bets were statistically anomalous.
And it's worth saying that a spokesperson for Beast Industries, which is the entertainment company that was founded by Mr. Beast, have said it had, quote, a no tolerance for this behaviour, whether by contestants or our own employees in relation to that case.
Not to go down too deep of a rabbit hole, but to give you a little bit of idea of the history of this, the guy who kind of invented this is a guy called Robin Hanson, the father of prediction markets. And he actually got the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, DARPA, the US Defense Research Agency, to fund one of his projects called the Policy Analysis Market. And the plan was to create prediction markets that would help predict events in the Middle East. It was dubbed the terror market. Now, this project was scuttled in 2003. Why do you think the terror market was cancelled?
Because it will encourage people to carry out attacks.
Exactly. So they quickly figured out if we start letting people bet on terrorism in the Middle East, people might do terrorism to make money on those bets.
Yeah, and then bet on it themselves. If, for example, a politician were to bet on an event where they kind of know what the outcome might be because they are party to privileged information, you'd get in trouble for that, wouldn't you? Like, that's insider trading. Yeah.
It's insider betting, and there is a difference. And the regulatory situation is difficult. So in the UK,
you can't use these websites, can you? They're
Right.
basically blocked. And say in places like France, that's also the case. Belgium, that's also the case. In the Netherlands, they now call this unlicensed betting. You can look at the website, like I'm able to look on my phone, but I can't participate basically. And then there are some, so Polymarket is the one we were talking about, which is outside of the US. Kalshi is the one that's like very US centric and focused. And there are quite a lot of places working out how to deal with this. But it's kind of interesting, isn't it, Matt? Because it's not dealt with like betting on sports, like betting on a football game or a soccer game or whatever the right American sport you want to bet on is. What's the best way of defining how it's regulated?
Well, yeah, a commodity is a kind of financial investment that works on the prediction of the future of a market, whereas a security is like an actual bit of investment, like a stock, for example.
Yeah.
In the US, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission is the body that regulates this, which means that they see it as a commodity. But the history of the regulation is kind of interesting. So initially, the CFTC was very much against this. Under Biden, they fined Polymarket $1.4 million and blocked Americans from trading on the platform. Then there was a lawsuit later that Kalshi won, paving the way for these prediction markets to continue.
And Donald Trump's administration had a very sort of different approach to this compared to Biden's.
I think it's fair to say that, yeah. So on election, so the prediction markets predicted Trump to win, both Kalshi and Polymarket. But yeah, just to give you an idea of like how things have changed for these companies, Shane Copeland, the guy who founded Polymarket, who's 27 years old, he's now a billionaire. He basically was raided by the FBI as part of an investigation. Under the Biden administration, Polymarket claimed the raid was political and was basically retaliation for its users betting overwhelmingly that Donald Trump would win the election. He did win the election. That investigation was later dropped. Kalshi also named Donald Trump Jr. as a paid advisor, and a few months later, Polymarket brought him on as an investor. So some people have pointed out that there's a lot of alignment between the Trump administration and these predictions markets.
Yeah, and speaking of politicians and the administration and everything else, I mean, presumably the people who are most advantaged when it comes to betting on this stuff would be people that work in the realm of politics or the government or, I don't know, the different sort of departments who would know what's going on.
Right. Like if you know that the US is about to strike Iran, you could place a bet on that and make a ton of money. There have been some suspicious examples of bets. For example, one person made $400,000 placing a bet on the eve of the US's operation to capture the Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro. He said he was going to get captured. He then was.
Yeah.
Which seemed a bit suspicious to people. Polymarket hasn't commented on that. Kalshi did respond by saying that its rules prohibit trading by anyone with material non-public information. On the other hand, some very clever people claim to have made money on the Maduro capture simply by building a bot to track Domino's Pizza's deliveries in Washington, because if more people are ordering pizza near the Pentagon, that means that people are staying up all night, like having meetings in the Pentagon, which means they might be about to do something. But there are other examples too. So last summer, an account called Rico Suave 666 won more than $150,000 on Polymarket, basically betting with very suspicious accuracy on the precise timing of Israel's attacks on Iran. Now, Israel actually arrested two men, one of whom was an army reservist, and charged them with bribery, obstruction of justice, and serious security offenses for placing bets using classified information. So what the Israeli case illustrates is that governments don't want, accurate probabilities for every event to be broadcast, especially when there's classified information involved. But that is, according to the founders of these companies, what they're trying to do.
And Matt, you also mentioned Ukraine. Obviously, the war's been happening there now for 4 years since Russia invaded. Is there any evidence that there's been insider betting when it comes to that? Like, what can you bet on?
Yes. So there's this map called, it's developed by the Institute for the Study of War, and it is essentially a live map of the Ukraine conflict, updated hourly to reflect advances and changes in the battle lines. There was one bet in particular around the battle for Mirnograd, which is, a place in Ukraine. And there was more than $1 million in trading volume for this bet. Will Russia capture Marianna. Now, at a certain point, it appears that someone with access to this map changed the battle lines, not in a way that reflected reality, but they just changed it on the map, leading people to make tons of money in this bet. And the Institute for the Study of War has said that, this was an unauthorized change to the map. And this is where you get into the problematic nature of these prediction markets, is when people start to change real world events and affect real world events in order to make money on bets.
And I guess that's why we're even talking about this, and it matters, is because like people can bet on outcomes. Here in the UK, for example, when there's an election or there's going to be one of many prime ministers that we have, people can decide to bet on who they think that might be, or who they think might win an election. But in a way that they can't affect the outcome, really. The issue here is the kind of ability to distort what's happening in the real world, because you're betting on certain things which you could then affect or change, and or it might encourage people to do certain things that would make their bets come true, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, that happened at the WNBA. There was this ridiculous event where people were throwing dildos onto the court at WNBA matches. And there was,
I feel like listening to this podcast, people must be like, what are
I know,
they
there's
talking about?
We're only talking
Jump
about reality.
scare.
This is just the world we now live in. So people are throwing dildos on the court at WNBA. Polymarket basically encouraged users to bet on whether it would happen again. Surprise, surprise. People started tossing dildos onto the court more.
Yeah.
So that may seem
You're
like
basically
a small example.
but you're incentivizing something, essentially.
Yeah. But what's the dildos on the court of the future? Is it the US striking Iran to make money on a Polymarket bet? It's all these things are now possible, right? The other thing is, there's a question as to how accurate the outcomes are and how open they are to manipulation.
Yeah.
So let's say, for example, you place a bet on will Zelensky wear a suit to his meeting, okay? And this is an actual bet for
And this is after he wore his army gear basically to this meeting where he got a real dressing down from Donald Trump and JD Vance.
Exactly. So this is a real bet.
Dressing down quite literally, but also dressing down.
Yeah. This was on Polymarket, and the trading volume was around $200 million.
Yeah.
On would Zelensky wear a suit? Now, do you remember Zelensky kind of wore a suit? But
but it wasn't like a traditional suit.
Exactly. So then it becomes a debate over who wins the bet, right? Because
and who defines what a suit is.
Right. So the BBC said that he was wearing a suit, but the bet actually said no, he wasn't. And that got people to question, hang on, how is the outcome of this bet actually being determined? The way it's being determined is pretty crazy and potentially manipulatable. So it goes through a crypto token called UMA, and holders of UMA basically vote on the outcome on a bet.
Wow.
Yeah, so they vote on the final consensus. But the weird thing about this is, if you as an UMA holder, when you vote, you stake some of your UMA, your financial holdings, on the outcome of a bet, and so you are financially incentivized to go with the majority, even if it's not factually accurate. Because if you say Zelensky is wearing a suit, but the UMA consensus is that he isn't, you then lose money. So it's not a perfect system by any means.
Yeah.
And also, some have said, through analysis, they've found that 95% of UMA tokens are held by large holders, which basically means that a small number of people control this supposedly decentralized system for deciding what the true outcome of a bet is. Kalshi has its own system for adjudicating bets, but it's Polymarket that uses this UMA system. And again, it may not seem that consequential if we're just talking about Zelensky wearing a suit or not, but hundreds of millions of dollars was riding on that, and there's loads and loads of bets that you could imagine where the outcome isn't clear.
The main reason we're talking about all of this is not least because it's popping up on social media and people are discussing it, but because it's all about this kind of world that you are very familiar with, Matt, of kind of crypto and stuff that feels a little bit murky and is kind of new, and therefore there also are questions about how to actually deal with it in the way that it can affect the world.
We're sort of playing catch up to it. And it's changing constantly. So now Polymarket has just announced that it's going to expand into attention markets where you can bet on what is likely to go viral. If you imagine a world, right, where you can bet on what is going to go viral and what you know about how algorithms work on social media.
Yeah, I mean, does that count as insider betting? I guess not, because it's just expert knowledge rather than like it's not like an insider who works at one of the social media companies has told me, by the way, we've changed our algorithm to favor X, Y, or Z.
But what you know about what you have found about algorithms is that they favor like argumentative, controversial content,
rage
right?
content, gonna provoke a reaction.
So people are already incentivized to create and share that stuff.
So double
through things like
incentivizes
the X marketing, X's payment program.
Yeah.
But now they could be even further incentivized by putting a bet on it. So the divisive
Surprise, surprise, the
disinformation
internet becomes worse.
Yeah,
Coming to W.
exactly.